Man, y'all know the face, y'all know the name. You tuned into the Royals Willis podcast, Talking Cheap podcast, hosted by yours truly, Mason. It's a movie, Cletus Real Talk. And I got a special guest here with me. In traditional Talking Cheap fashion, y'all know I don't introduce my guests. I feel like it's very lackluster. I feel like it's very unimpressive. And to be quite frank, I just don't think I'll do as good of a job introducing them as they would do introducing themselves. So my guest, please introduce yourself.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Sultan, originally from Staten Island, New York. Excited to be able to have this conversation today with you all.
My brother. So what's been going on with you, bro? You've been in a lot of places. You've done a lot of different things, and it's just interesting to see because like you move like a ghost now. Like I back in the day, like I'll know where you at from where you are from like a location or from like an Instagram post or something like that. Now it's like I don't even know where you at these days. So what's been going on with you?
Yeah, man, that's an interesting point. It's actually been intentional, not being visibly available, I guess, to the world in real time. And it's really just been around protecting my energy, maintaining my focus level, and then also, safety as well. So as you watch things happen, the smart thing to do is learn, right? So I'll go into what the focus part means, and then I'll kind of talk about the safety a little bit. But from a focus standpoint, what I found was when I generally traveled to an area, growing up in New York City, your network grows extremely fast, and you don't really realize that until you leave New York City, that you know somebody in every single state, pretty much. So as far as traveling to a new area and then needing to get acclimated, it's typically pretty easy. But when you travel to a new area with a mission and a time limit, when you announce yourself, you find yourself wanting to commit to capturing time in those relationships. And sometimes it may throw you off course or add extra pressure to what you need to accomplish, and you find yourself juggling. So as time passed, it was more mission first, and then politics second.
I love that. So you saying mission first, politics second. What is the mission for you? And then we could get back into the focus portion of what you was going to say.
Yeah, I think the mission for me, it's not always clearly defined, but it's more of a challenge to do what is hard, and then make sure that I'm opening doors, breaking barriers, and paving ways in the spaces that I know how to. So I think when we talk about things like status quo, what people would say quote unquote regular, or just average, those are things that I would say are easy to obtain and can happen as long as you follow the standard motion. So I think what I pride myself on trying to accomplish every day is slightly outside of that realm, but still focusing on basics, right? And building consistency and repetition into my daily routine to be able to just compound results.
Okay, so the goal is basically to elevate and reach excellence in a way that's not normal or average. They basically not live a traditional 9-to-5 life with the same coming home at a certain time, watching TV, not doing nothing that's like super impressive, that's hard or challenging. So your goal is always to evolve basically as a person.
Yeah, I would say that's part of it, and I think my goal ultimately is to help as many people as possible. And I think that's really the fulfilling part of growing, is your ability to help in a larger atmosphere or a larger space. So before, helping somebody may have been, helping somebody get to school on time or crossing the street, things like that. And then as you evolve in your space, helping somebody is making that transition easier for them. So I think for me, it's more about it's not about defying, you know, 9 to 5 or you know, getting home on time per se, but I think it's just opening doors that seem hard. So, you know, the goals that maybe I had set for myself 10 years ago, 10 years later, I realized those goals were small. But they were big 10 years ago. So I think making sure that I'm keeping a pulse on what's realistic, but also having that stretch mindset is really, you know, ultimately what I'm moving towards daily.
No, I understand completely, and I respect that. I think a lot of people get caught up in just routine, especially because we spoke about this before we got on the pod. A lot of people are getting older, and you know we get into that 30s. It's very hard to be able to still look at your life and be like, it's very easy to look at your life and be like, what am I doing with myself? What am I doing with my time? What am I aiming for? What is the goal? What am I doing all this for? So I understand that completely. How have you been able to become so focused in your process?
Yeah, so and I struggle with it, you know, just like most people do as well. So definitely not an expert in the space, but I think what I've grown to understand more and index my actions around is not what I do want, but more what I don't want. Because I feel that that's more clearly defined. So a lot of the times when you ask people, hey, what do you want? You know, what are you trying to achieve? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? That's a very difficult question to answer because we can't see the future and circumstances change so quickly. But as circumstances change, we've managed to find a way to stay away from what we don't want. And I feel like what you don't want is clearly defined. You understand the implications of it. You know why you don't want it. So you can create your actions for yourself around what you don't want. And then ultimately that's going to get you closer to what you do want.
So what are some of those things that you know that you don't want to, you know, go through or don't want in terms of your life and the things that make your life meaningful? Like, what are those things that you clearly define as your don'ts or your don't wants?
For me, what I don't want is to be in a constant scenario of having to make a trade-off. So, you know, when we look at the word trade-off, it's sacrificing something for the greater benefit of another thing. And I think that that's a dangerous place to be. And it's also a necessary place to be. But the impact of your trade-offs is determined by how you set yourself up on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and beyond basis, right? So you have some people who make trade-offs, unfortunately, between things like eating or, you know, updating their clothing, for example. And in that situation, that may be a serious trade-off depending on what the impact of updating your clothing may have on your ability to earn, depending on what space you're in, right? Physical presentation, depending on the type of industry that you're in, can be pretty important. So that's an example of what I would consider an extreme trade-off. Another extreme trade-off would be you're working and you got to make a decision between providing for your family and being present for your family. The situation that I'm in right now, without currently having my own family, right? You know, kids, marriage, the whole nine. I have a unique opportunity to brace myself for that, and then limit the impact of that trade-off. So there's always going to be some level of decision that you have to make. The amount of decisions and times where you have to make what I'm identifying as a trade-off in this scenario is important. So with the understanding that it's going to happen at some point, reducing the frequency through my actions is something that I'm pretty intentional about. I haven't always been intentional about it, but knowing that these things do have impacts and trade-offs, ultimately sacrifice something, you just want to make sure that you're positioning yourself to limit what you have to sacrifice.
So basically it's making sure that you don't put yourself in a position where you have to make choices that you don't want to have to make, or make hard decisions that you don't really care to have to make, when this should be like a no-brainer. It's like your family should always come first, but a lot of people do prioritize making money over actually being able to be there present for their family. Or a lot of people would choose, eating at a certain place because they can afford it versus what's actually good for them.
Right.
So it's basically being able to be in a position where, is it money not making those decisions hard, or is it more so just in general not being in a position to have to make those hard decisions because you don't have to worry about going without?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. And ultimately, it's having an abundance of access to resources to be able to make all of those things cohabitate in as smooth of a way as possible. So, like I said, there's always going to be some level of trade-off. The impact of it, the necessity of it, those are things that we can control through how we decide to set our baseline up.
So how have you been able to do that? Because your journey is very unique. I remember, obviously I know you're from Staten Island, and if you want we could go up as far back as possible, because I do like to kind of date these sometimes. So I knew you from Staten Island back in the day. You went to CSI High School, McCown.
Yep.
And what was that time like for you?
It was pretty interesting. I'm gonna grab a drink of water.
Go ahead.
I think it was pretty interesting. I mean, if we go a little bit further back, what a lot of people don't know is, I wasn't always, I guess, what you would consider well behaved, right? So, middle school leading up into high school and throughout high school, there were a lot of behavioral situations, suspensions, poor grades, things that, what I would say, looking back, were within control, but I didn't necessarily capitalize on. And the why is yet to be answered, right, or pinned down. But I think that's that part, right? That's a school part. From a social aspect, very tight group of friends that came from high school. Beyond that, the neighborhood, met a lot of people. I would say that our age group, like that whole era was honestly overall a fun time, and it came with its pros and cons for sure. Staten Island definitely, like, it can create whatever beast you ask it to. So I feel like growing up around that time, I really just, I saw every aspect of what the city has to offer, right? And I got involved in every single aspect that the city has to offer, and ultimately it was foundational for how I was able to carry myself leaving the city once it was time to do so. And I feel like it was an advantage.
So when you left Staten Island, because a lot of people don't leave Staten Island, that's something that I always wondered what it'd be like if I never left Staten Island, but I'm kind of glad that I did, because it honestly made me a different kind of beast and made me a different kind of man. But when you left Staten Island, you went to college, and you went to UConn or Penn State?
I went to Penn State.
You went to Penn State.
Yeah.
And what was it like going to Penn State? And what was that time like for you, just in your evolution as a man?
Yeah, I think for me, Penn State was a crazy opportunity because it was actually the only college I got into,
Wow.
to be honest. So thankfully, I got a really supportive mother who was with me throughout the process, and I actually had to appeal to get into that school and then join a 2+2 program where you start at a satellite campus before you go to the main campus. And that was a result of the poor grades and the suspensions, but there were some silver linings throughout my academic career in high school that we were able to capitalize on and ultimately make a case for. But I mean, there were schools with high acceptance rates that I remember I was getting denials from. And I remember my mom dragged me to Brown University, knowing I had a 0% chance of getting in there, but just to walk me through the campus, right? While I was kind of doubting myself. So big shout outs to her for that. Ultimately, I got into Penn State. Took it as a second chance. Wasn't necessarily an easy road either, because you're breaking a lot of bad habits that you had developed over the last 4 years. But I did understand that I was in a situation to kind of rebound from my trajectory, and I knew I had the capacity to do so. So I leaned in on that space academically and was able to trail the line there. From a work standpoint and just maintaining a lifestyle, I mean, definitely college challenges for sure, but I think again that's where the New York City advantages come into play. I think I held a job for 2 weeks in college, but I funded myself through college just from being crafty. I remember I started a gold business where I was liquidating gold. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you was like, how did you get into that kind of business? Like, what made you want to get into crafting and liquidating gold?
Again, it's like just knowing so many people. So, when you're outside, all the trends, right? Like they pop up. Oh, such and such is making money off of this. Like such and such is trapping. Such and such just started their first business, XYZ. So it was really a random conversation like that about somebody who was making a killing. I don't know their name, to be honest with you, but I think they went to Port, something like that. But they were making a killing doing gold. And I didn't know them, nor did I really, meet them. But ultimately, I was just like, I mean, it seems easy enough. Like, it's not a difficult process, and I really don't have anything to lose. So I did get an internship that year, and that was first year out of college or what have you, like a New York City internship, and I took that money and I put it into the gold situation, and that helped me purchase my first car, and then the hustle just kind of started compounding through college. And I mean, by the time I graduated college, I probably was making money from like 4 different areas, if I'm being honest with you. And it just worked out like that.
And how did you keep that hustle going? Because I feel like a lot of people, what happens is they'll go to college, and I feel like college is one of the best experiences when it comes to getting your hustle together. They'll go away for college, they'll get a hustle going, then they come back either home or they go back to a place where they're comfortable and they lose that hustle. So how did you go and continue to maintain your hustle throughout this whole process?
Yeah, I think it was a matter of necessity. So the gold business and whatever else I was doing, like those didn't pan out to be 7-figure businesses or make it to the Fortune 100 list or anything like that. But at the end of the day, those are things that I was able to create, maintain, and run a process, a repeatable process, right, which allowed me to be able to do that. So I think knowing that, as I've left Staten Island and lived in a number of places, and also really just watched what the recession did to families, the impact it had on my family, neighboring areas, right? Like the hustle can't leave you. So I don't know that I was intentional about it, or more so like again, the New York City situation of that's just how we live. So that was the part of New York City that stayed with me,
Okay, so you graduate from Penn State, went to a satellite school first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next move for you? Because, most people after they graduate, they don't get a job. they try to find jobs, but they don't really usually find a really good job. Or if they do get a job, it doesn't really pay much, and it's just to get into a position. So what was the next move for you, and what was your major at Penn State?
Ultimately, it was international political economics with a minor in business. I couldn't tell you if I officially got the minor or not, but I know it went on the resume. You know, yeah, real talk.
Yeah, but I feel it. You gotta put on the resume.
But I mean, I landed with Amazon. It was October before I graduated. I graduated in May, so the October prior. Locked that down. They reached out to me. One thing that I think I made sure I did throughout college was like I always had an internship every summer, so that kept me going, and then built a competitive edge when it came to job search. So I was one of the fortunate folks that got to graduate with that stress gone, but I think it opened up a different kind of stress, that people don't really talk about as much, which is, when you acquire favor, handling it as it's happening quickly. So, I talked about extremes at the beginning of this podcast with trade-offs, and by no means did I go to the NBA or MLB or anything like that, but I think I was able to understand some level of similarity in terms of, I now had resources that a lot of people around me didn't have. So that led to overextension, a social responsibility of helping people kind of figure out how they can get in position, trying to figure out how to not squander the situation, because ultimately now you have a bunch of people looking up to you, and then just being prepared for what's in front of me.
So what was some of those, because you said that you get to a position that you get favor. What does that favor look like? Because there's some people that never will get to see it. So what does that favor or that extreme favor look like for you? What was at that time? What did it look like? Was it money? Was it, you said opportunities and access? Like, what was those opportunities and accesses?
I mean, it's definitely money, right? Like, I can't remember how much I made coming out of college, but it was close to six figures. And you're going from not having consistent money to close to six figures, right? Plus whatever money I was already used to making. So, I'm 21. I'm doing all right? As far as that goes. So definitely money. I think experiences. So, relatability, access to different minds, because it came with some level of travel. I moved to a new city. I moved to Richmond, Virginia. I didn't like Richmond, Virginia, but at the end of the day, I got to face myself. So understanding myself in that situation, how I actually move. Jay-Z says, drop me anywhere on God's green, right? So it was a situation like that for sure. And I think ultimately the favor in perspective, and then social responsibility to be able to extend a hand is really where the most stress came from. So you know where we're at, like, how it could be for a lot of folks. And then trying to figure out ways to communicate and provide support without being like overbearing, I think, because a lot of things could be misconstrued. So I think ultimately it was really just a situation that I hadn't been in, and figuring out how to leverage what is positive, but make it a positive experience for everyone right through the journey.
Why did you feel it was your responsibility to reach back and help out and help people? Like, what made you want to do that? Because most people, when they get into a certain position that is still unusual to them, they're still figuring out that situation. So why did you feel like while you were in that position, it was like time for you to really give back or try to reach back and help people?
I mean, because it's favor, right? Like, at the end of the day, whatever I was experiencing, like it was compounded investments from different folks. I mean, you got my parents, you got, you know, my siblings motivated me. Like I said, close friends, everybody, you know, cheering for you to do well when you leave. I didn't have the situation where people were hoping that I didn't do well. Everybody I spoke to is always positive, and hoping that, you know, I find the return on investment. I got Charles, who we grew up pretty close to each other, like literally across the street. He was in a position a few years older than me, kind of led me throughout the way, right? So honestly, it wasn't a feeling of something that I had to do. It just felt natural because like that's the social circle that I was in, but like it was normal. So now my contribution changed from receiving to helping, right?
So, how do you develop a social circle? And when you say Charles, you're talking about Charles Fall, the first black assemblyman of Staten Island, New York.
Yep.
When you say social circle, how do you develop a powerful social circle? Because I feel like one of the biggest challenges that can be for a young professional is getting into social circles where you may not be the most talented, or you may not be the most wealthiest, or you may not be the one that has the most to offer, but you're trying to be around people who are in positions of power or high net worth individuals. So how do you get into those spaces? Like, how do you develop a social circle that's like that?
Yeah, I think, and again, this is one of those things where, you know, there's always going to be a bigger fish. There's always going to be somebody with more. So, like right now, I'm trying to figure that out as I'm answering the question, right? So, it's definitely, you know, from my vantage point, if I was going to answer it with my social circle, it definitely doesn't require trying to be around people or trying to get into rooms, because that's a lot of effort. The main thing, and this is going to sound crazy, but, you know, focus on yourself, king and queen, right? Consistent, get up every day, like head towards the direction that you feel is the most accurate and run at it full speed. And eventually, like you'll find somebody that can help you, a like-minded person, or you'll find that you need to redirect yourself. But I never found myself looking for someone, but making sure that the opportunities that were in front of me, I just showed up for. And I think just showing up is, they say it's half the battle, but I really think it's the whole battle, transparently. So yeah, I think over time the social circle builds, and if you can't find it, create it, right? So, like my neighbor, for those of you from Staten Island, his name is Chalk. People know him as Chalk. Other people know him as Jamel. Family calls him Toby, whatever, right? Like I don't know what to call him, but that's my brother, right? Like we grew up together, next door neighbors. We're in the same social circle. He's doing well. My brother, right? My sister, neighbor, cousins. We weren't doing well 10 years ago because, like, I don't know, we just weren't of age. But I think what people also need to make sure that they focus on is like those that are around you right now. And sometimes it's not about finding the right circle. It's about creating the circle and keeping the conversations in the direction that's good for everybody. And then ultimately somebody's going to be able to take that first step, and that's how it'll work. Then the circle that you were looking for becomes a circle that you created.
What is the standard of doing well to you? Is it six figures? Is it health? Is it education? Is it a summation of all those things? Like, what does it look like to you?
So it depends on the conversation. Like right now, like last year, none of my New Year's resolutions were financial New Year's resolutions, right? Because I felt fulfilled up to a certain point in that space. It was more, you know, spiritual and health resolutions. So I think that doing well ultimately is being able to balance your trade-offs, right? And do it in a way that that you're happy with and that you can also like extend to others with. So there's no like financial benchmark for it. There's no like level of worship with it, but I think it's really, and I don't want to use the word balance, but it's really that like how much stress have you eliminated from your life? Ultimately, is what I would say doing well is. You got day-to-day stress, which is like that's never gonna go away. But do you have stress on your relationship with God? Do you have stress on your relationship with your family? Do you have stress on your relationship with your friends? Do you have stress on your relationship with your bank account? And if you've limited those or you don't have that, then like you're doing well.
I like that a lot. I think the elimination of stress definitely is a good way to look at whether or not you're doing well in life, financially, spiritually, physically, educationally, etc., etc. Because I think a lot of people get caught up in the process of if they're not making a certain type of money or driving a certain type of car or living in a certain type of place or wearing a certain type of designer, that they're not doing well in life. Like, I feel like, yes, some people would wish that they were billionaires, but some people are very, very, very well off in their own day-to-day life and they're not making six figures. So it really depends on really what your idea of what success looks like. So I understand that completely. So you're in Richmond, Virginia, just graduated, freshly out of college. What's the next move for you? And at this point, you're still at Amazon, right?
Right. I did Richmond, Virginia for like a year and some change. I went on to do like a little short-term assignment in Dallas. So I was in distribution at the time, fulfillment operations, and we went on to launch what they stated was the fastest launch in the company's history. So we set up and shut down a building in 6 months just to handle like income and volume for holiday season. From that point, I was like, all right, I'm not going back to Virginia. So then, we did that. Assignment was over. I went over to Vegas for a little bit. I helped out in Vegas. After that, I went on to Houston, which is where I spent the majority of the last decade. And then I really just started building out, my reputation in the supply chain industry. And then, finding favor in that. Which led to, multiple increases in responsibility over the years. I went over to Singapore. I helped launch that market for a bit. I helped launch the Brazilian market because I was sought out as somebody that knew how to do these things well. And then, in that process, like built a foundation in Houston, Texas, and then transitioned over to the Midwest recently. And kind of just doing that thing.
How did you get so good in supply chain? And for those who may not know what supply chain is, explain what supply chain is for those who don't know.
In short, supply chain is the flow of resources that contribute to a company's success. That's the simplest way that I would put it. Manufacturing supply chain will handle physical products and ultimately the value stream for a company in terms of how we're moving product through its fulfillment channels for the customer. So you get into machines, people leadership, end-to-end design, and then ultimately efficiency and speed.
And how did you get good at that? Because that's not something that you learned in college.
Well, like I said, I first had the opportunity to start in Virginia, and I didn't have anybody around me, so I just got geeky about it, transparently, and read everything in front of me, actioned everything quickly that I found valuable. And then made sure that I was delivering at the highest level. So, I nothing other than wanting to get good at it, to be honest. Like, I wanted to get good at it. So I did.
Well, what made you want to get good at it? Like, what motivated you? Was it the money? Was it something that you were just interested in? Like, what about supply chain made you, like, is it something you're passionate about? Would you say you're passionate about supply chain?
Yeah, yeah. The part I enjoyed the most was leadership. So I started leading like 100 people or something like that. So, being able to have a positive impact in that space was what kept me attached to it. And then it was really like I was leading people through supply chain. So supply chain was the stream that I was able to lead people through. But ultimately, the main focus for me was leading large groups and then having a positive impact on people's lives. So I know that if I was good at it, I'd be able to lead them properly and ultimately help them. So we keep going back to that. And I've come across people like in the industry that weren't in great positions that attribute me to helping them get out of those situations and then ultimately thriving. So do I remember redesigning this area and it being the greatest thing ever? 9 times out of 10, no. It's, nature of the beast and it's the cost of doing business. So I don't remember that, but I do remember working with, this specific individual, helping them get from here to here, and then wanting to have a bigger impact to be able to continue to do that at a larger scale. Ultimately is why I just kept doing it. And I mean, today it's thousands of people and it still feels like 100 because I'm doing it the same way, if you ask me. It's just face-to-face contact.
That's awesome. So if anybody wanted to get into supply chain, what advice would you give them on how to go about doing that?
Shoot me an email.
What's your email?
I mean, we could put it in the tag.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, most definitely. Yeah. Okay, so now you're in the Midwest. You've helped thousands of people. You made many leaps and bounds. Financially, you're probably like double or triple where you were once at, and now you're in a position to really build a legacy. So what's the next legacy? I know you speak about impact, but what kind of impacts are you looking to make at this next junction of your life?
I mean, I've always kept myself busy on the side. Like I own an investment group. Started multiple businesses. I've helped people increase the revenue and bottom line of their business. Just because, like, I remember I had braids for like a quick situation through the pandemic, and the lady that was braiding my hair, she was charging me like $50 or something. I gave her $100 and was like, you need to raise your price tomorrow, and she did it. And like her business is doing double the revenue of what it was previously doing. So I think a lot of it is like, paying people what they're worth, helping people see their value immediately. But the next step is, just being intentional about action. So I think, like you said, we're 30. We're getting nieces, nephews, kids of our own. So what does that look like? And, did you do what you needed to do in order to be able to eliminate roadblocks for what's coming up next? And if you haven't, then like just get started. So and it's weird because I don't have this like this one goal that I'm trying to achieve. The world is so big. But I think if your actions are rooted in principle and you get good at your craft, right? And in this case, we spoke a lot about supply chain. I think that those two marry each other a lot.
So your craft, would you say like your craft is business development, supply chain, just all the above with leadership and included in that? And I guess my next question would really be, in terms of legacy, how do you deem your legacy to be fulfilled, or the legacy that you want to be left to be accomplished? Like, how do you see that happening for you?
Yeah, my craft. I think my craft is scaling, right? I'm confident I could scale anything that's in front of me. Um, so that's what my calling is helping make things bigger, ultimately. Um, as far as my legacy goes, like I got a big legacy behind me, right? Family's pretty well educated. For decades, we're Nigerian, so there's what comes with that. I want to be the first to say that, like, I don't let the whole Nigerian pressure get to me. Like, I messed that up in high school, so, like, expectations were low for me, which was good. So they knew I wasn't going to be a doctor or anything like that. But legacy wise, I've already started. With how I've set up things. I've set up my structure. Things like funds, things like trust, just ultimately things that we may not have necessarily been aware of, transitioning from Nigeria to London to ultimately the United States. So that leap that the previous generation did on my side of the family is a pretty big shoe to fill, just going somewhere that you've never been and then ultimately, like, raising children, while there's countless odds against you. And then we haven't even got into what the political situation of the world looked like in that time, right? I'm 30 years old, so we're talking about the 90s, and then they're growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So the climate was just, the landscape was different than what it is now. So I don't know that I can replicate that, but ultimately, if I can move the next generation forward in our legacy, which I have all intentions of doing, and I'm pretty confident in that, then I think we're good. So, like, that's what I'm setting out to do.
And you spoke about being a young adult and being 30. What has adulthood look like for you? And, like, are you looking to start a family soon, or where's that on your agenda of things that you want to accomplish?
For the record, I'm 29.
20, yeah, we're 29. We're not 30. We're not 30
for
yet.
the record, but I like the Jack 30 though, for sure.
You like Jack and 30? Why?
I mean, cause it's in front.
Oh yeah, you looking forward always. You're not looking back.
Yeah,
I like that.
I want a Jack 30.
I'm not ready for 30.
Yeah,
I'm not ready for 30, not because 30 is about to be something I feel completely different. It's just 30. Like, just saying that I'm about to be 30.
I still got my hairline, bro.
Well, I'm bald.
Yeah. I'm good.
I'm bald.
I'm good.
But, I like my bald.
Yeah.
Being bald is sexy in these streets. So it's
I agree.
For me it works. But having the hairline is also very, very, very wavy as well.
Literally.
You know what I mean? So, hey. So, what has adulting been looking like for you? Like, what has adulting these last 10 years, going from 20 to 18 to almost 30, what has that looked like for you?
It's really just been... It's been trying to get the habits back, or establish the habits that we were told to establish when we weren't 18, when we were younger, right? Like, read a book. Go read a book. I'm doing more of that. Go to the gym. Make sure you stay active. Like, all those simple things that, add up to ultimately being in a good position to be able to add impact, create thrust in generations is what it's been for me. But learning a lot, so staying diverse in where I'm physically at, who I'm interacting with. Like, I've traveled the world, I would say, or at least I've done well in consistently traveling. So maintaining perspective, but to be honest, like, it's all about making smarter decisions at the end of the day. So I'd like to get to 30 and have this be my 30 plus venture, but I'm starting now. So hopefully when I cross the 30 road, it's not a whole new thing that I'm trying to do, and it's really just like continuance.
I love that. And you say you travel a lot. Where's your favorite place that you've traveled to?
So I'm gonna go with Nigeria first and foremost, right? So now that that's out the way, because I'm not getting canceled by all my Nigerians.
What was Nigeria like for you?
Nigeria was cool because I went there for the first time actually like 2 years ago, and I mean my family was very happy out there. We did a celebration for my grandfather, so there was a lot of people around, and then ultimately seeing where my roots are from was a big deal. Food, I gained a lot of weight.
They will make you eat.
Yeah, so
if you don't eat, they look at you like it's taboo.
It was a good time. It was a good time for sure. I think another close favorite. We just did a family trip to Morocco. So that's Africa again, but we were celebrating my dad's 60th this time. We had like 150 people come out for that.
Wow, that's dope. That's really dope.
That was dope. Machu Picchu was like a very different kind of trip, but also a great trip, and that was not like a big family trip. So there's that. I mean, I lived in Singapore for a little, so I don't know if that's a trip, but
what was Singapore like?
Clean, like icy clean. Like I don't even know if the streets are black in Singapore. I feel like they're white. They gotta be painted white. It's so clean.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so clean. And it's strict. And it's a different place at night though. So like as good of a rep as it has, I'm on to you Singapore from a nighttime standpoint because that is not the same city at nighttime as it is in the daytime. Daytime they practice very strict guidelines in terms of how you should behave, and at nighttime, you might think you're in Ibiza.
You been to Ibiza?
No, but if I had to think of what it was like, it was probably Singapore
Tel
at night.
Aviv, Ibiza. There's places in Lebanon that goes crazy.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm already knowing. That must be crazy. I want to go to Singapore. I want to go to Singapore for like a job though. I don't think I would want to go to Singapore just to travel to Singapore.
Yeah, I mean, I was there on work for sure. I mean, I've seen a couple of the world wonders too. Like, everything is good. It's just new experiences with good people, to be honest.
Definitely.
But I also want to say, like, the United States, it got its pros and cons, but like, there is reason to be grateful for being in the United States as well, for what it's worth for those listening.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and we won't really touch on it. Obviously, we know the whole thing going on with Ukraine and Russia. We got the whole thing going on with Palestine and Israel. It's just crazy. For me, all I'll say is I just wish that, everyone has peace. Everyone has peace in their families, in their homes, in their countries, that everyone doesn't have to worry about being bombed and not having access to water, food, internet service, stuff like that. This world is going through a lot right now, and even in America, like, we going through like unprecedented times. Inflation is high, unemployment is high. People are going through some real stuff. So if you are in a position where you don't have to really feel those impacts and those effects, consider yourself blessed, so.
Yeah, for sure. I think recently, so when I moved to the Midwest, I didn't exactly, know where I wanted to land. So I just did the nomad thing for 6 months, and that was a crazy experience as well because I was switching hotels maybe like every 2 days, every 3 days, checking out from Milwaukee to Chicago and the whole line of it. And I remember opening up my storage unit when I finally got a place and decided on where I was going to live, and then being pissed off at everything I had in my storage unit because I didn't need it for 6 months on the road. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I had 7 of, 8 of. I would go to my storage unit probably once a week, switch out some shoes or something like that, but there was no need for the stuff that was in there because I was fine, right? After 6 months. So those are the things that like I'm I'm happy that I got to experience. Because with ascension comes consumption, right? And then like having a moment to be able to assess where you're at in consumption versus necessity is always a good thing.
When you say consumption, it's just like when you elevate people. It's not even people, but like more money comes to the will or the feeling to want to spend more and buy more and get more. And why do you think that is?
I mean, some of it is like, why not? Like, like I'm not gonna sit here and lie. Like, you do only live once. Like, I know it's bad financial advice, but there is truth in it. You only live once, so do what makes you feel good. And some of that is buying a little stupid vase, because it looks good in that corner, and it makes you feel good. Some of it is getting that Thai food plate or whatever, what have you. So I think that there's a level of like, I don't want to go too extreme, and like I'm definitely not a minimalist at all, but there is limits to how much you need to consume before it consumes you. And ultimately, like, I think staring at a storage unit that I didn't need anything out of for 6 months was that reality check for me. But having the ability to take something, own something, that's why, like, if we all had $70 billion, like, instead of looking at the shoes and just buying the shoes like we do with our money, like, we may look at the house and just buy the house and keep, you know what I mean? It's whatever's in your means, you're just gonna grab because you can. That's really what it comes down to.
So what's the next for you, brother? You're doing well at your job. You help people with businesses. You've been very educated, well-traveled. So what's the next thing that's for you, that you feel like you need to accomplish, or what's this next up for you?
Continuing it, the kids got to come. I know you asked that earlier. So that's got to come. And then ultimately, like, really just, to be honest, retiring my parents is a thing that I want to do. But honestly, just having a lot of fun, because I feel like my 20s were fun, and I'm not trying to give up the fun. Like, I like to party. I like to have fun. So it's in my blood. My parents love to party. Like, so that's what's next. What's next is a lot of fun, more lessons, and smarter decisions. And then whatever comes out of those three things is like what comes out of it, but it's gonna be good.
I love that for you, brother. I hope that you get everything that you say that you want out of your life, and I hope that you continue to just grow and expand in every facet. And I hope that this stuff is fun for you. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like life sometimes just doesn't feel fun anymore. Like, they say like happiness is fleeting.
Yeah.
I feel like fun is fleeting too.
Yeah, we're bringing it to the forefront. And I've been there, right, with being so zeroed in on something that you forget to have fun, or you feel like there's no time for it, but there's always time for it. And I know people will like give advice to limit the fun while you're going after what you want, and I'm not saying over-index on the fun while you're going after what you want, but you can't go after what you want without having fun, because then it's not going to be what you want.
Yeah, I feel that. And people want to definitely link up with you. Well, even before I say that, thank you so much for coming, brother. Thank you for your time, your energy, your effort. Is there anything that you feel that you want to say or share before we wrap up?
Just thank you for having me. I know we caught each other on the road over the past couple of years as well, so it was always a pleasure, and like I'm happy that I got the opportunity. I feel blessed to be able to join this podcast. For anybody listening, thank you for listening, and reach out if you do want to have a conversation about anything. I'm always willing to do so.
Thank you. And you're still at Amazon, or you're not at Amazon anymore?
I'm currently at Amazon.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But I got other ventures.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Definitely, we could definitely talk about that off air. Thank you so much for your time, brother. I'm just happy to be able to spend this moment with you. And like I said, you're tuning in to Talk Ain't Cheap, and you know the slogan, it's not that deep. It's a vibe.